other examples of chapbooks that I was introduced to early on were a couple of graduate students that were ahead of me at CSU started a chapbook press called Delete Press. Now they're making full-length manuscripts, but one of their first ones was this chapbook by the poet Kate Greenstreet. Just stapled, printed thing that also had a little fabric case for it. Those were some of my first introductions. And you can see just in the different materials and the ones that we've shown you so far that there are so many different material approaches to chapbooks, but which is part of what's fun about them. But what do you feel about chapbooks? We both love chapbooks. We'll just put that out there. But what drew you to chapbooks, or what do you find particularly exciting about them?
I think the two things that drew me and continue to draw me, because I've never had the pleasure of working with a letterpress, but I do like the making of the object or the art of the object, and because they are often, if they are a handmade art object, then they're in smaller runs. They become this really precious thing that you have, rather than books that can accrue and accrue and accrue. And as much as you love a book, it might also just be 20, 100 other people have that same book, and it's not really, or maybe you can get it online. And there's not really. I do love books, but sometimes it doesn't feel like there's as much purpose to having a text as the art object of a made.
You can check it out from the library.
Yeah, right. But the other thing is really to do more with function, like when I discovered, I'm intimidated by the concept of writing a full-length 70 to 80 poem manuscript, but I definitely have 20. It's just simpler as a concept. And even now, I was saying to Cassie earlier, why is a full-length manuscript a minimum of 70 to 80 pages? That might be an economic decision about what it costs to manufacture and to ship and to sell. But why do you have to have 70 to 80 poems to get published beyond one poem? Instead, I can be no, I have 10, or I have 20, or I have 30, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a set of poems. And I can put it out there into the world, either on its own, or say I do have a full-length manuscript, which I do have 2 or 3, but it's also very hard to get those published. Well, I still have the ability to pull 20 or 30 poems from that larger manuscript. Whether they originally appear in that order or not, I can make a whole new little collection. So it's sort of like making a great little playlist out of a really awesome music library. I can just be it'd be great if somebody wanted to publish these 80 poems. That's going to take a while. Yeah. But it's pretty easy to get these 20 or 30 poems out there. And it's, I think, particularly because there's so many great poets, and relative to the number of great poets, there's so few abilities to publish full texts.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about with publishing, too, is one of the things that's so appealing to me is that sort of the larger publisher is cut out, and there's a lot more artistic control that happens. Whether you are designing it or someone else is designing it, usually, not usually, I think always, chapbooks are created by poets.
Which is funny because that's not the history of chapbooks.
No.
But I think now that it's either a zine, which is not only poets, but a zine or poets.
Yeah.
That's kind of it.
It's definitely not the history of chapbooks, but it's become in our contemporary moment, that's what makes chapbooks. And so there are communities that, just in the example that I had of this, first book, that sort of come together in the creation of the object, and I think that there's more community and more direct artistic vision coming through. And it's why is the poetry book the size a poetry book is? feels arbitrary and probably economical in the same way that, like, why is an 8.5 and 11 piece of paper, like, that's, who says that should be, like, the dimensions of your poem, which we sort of explored at the beginning of the class in the instant book, and, you know, taking an 8.5, 11 piece of paper and folding it into a chapbook-sized thing. You can see there's, like, what looks like some kind of terrain, and then if you open it, you see more terrain, and there's an ear. The chapbook itself, there's that ear again, is called, it's backwards, but that's what it says. And it's a beautiful object in and of itself, and it, I think, ended up becoming a full-length book. But my friend Caroline and I wanted to be involved and help, and so we made these slip covers that are these muslin slip covers with this red thread, and it was sort of mimicking like sound waves or terrain or things like that. We spent a lot of time thinking about the design of it, but that was also really fun to be involved with as well. And then there was an undergraduate student who was an excellent poet and ended up going off to get an MFA, but when he was an undergrad, he made this chapbook. He was actually an art student. And it's just, that is very exciting for me, and it's, there is something, like you were talking about, this kind of precious, like, oh, I don't know, I think it's probably similar to, like, records, and the sort of resurgence of records, like, it's not just like an object to get the poems to you, it's like an experience.
To cherish.
Yeah, like maybe there's artwork that you're not going to find, you know, if you just download it online, if you just get it through iTunes. It's like a more tactile experience, and so, yeah.
It's a lot more tactile, especially with the online age. I think the chapbook, maybe in reaction to the online age, the chapbook has had such love because it's a physical experience. I can hold it in my hands, and there's like a letterpress text, you know, like this one with homemade paper. You saw the rough edges earlier. But not only is there the roughness of the paper and the edges, but you can actually see and feel the indentation.
It's like, I mean, it's basically like, I don't know, like artist poetry porn or something. You know what I mean?
I'm sitting here feeling
like it's very exciting if you have any kind of understanding of the like history of like type and like
And you don't know this about me. My mother was a graphic design artist.
Yeah.
And had on our wall, I grew up with typeface.
Oh, fun.
Blocks. Just like kind of an assortment in artistic, you know, conglomerations and combinations on my wall.
Cool.
Like that's, you know, so it's kind of a personal connection to it, I think.
Yeah, I mean the experience of using a letterpress is so satisfying. But what you're saying is like it's so interesting that like it's not that one is being valued over the other. People who make chapbooks often have online material as well. Even publishers might have chapbooks that they publish, you know, in this physical form, and they might have ones that they publish online as well, which actually. That is the case with the ones that they're reading. So one of the books that you'll be reading, you can access it online. This is Matthew Kuberman and Abby Kalpang's Disorder 299. And it is, but it's also available in print. So there's crossover, but yeah, I think there's like, that there is a resurgence or like just this like renewed interest in the main object. Which I think there's a similar, what's interesting is, I mean, we could talk about this for so long, but like the typewriter I think allowed for like, oh, you have technology that like, you know, you can do so many things with it. You can like move the paper. It's not bound by like this sort of left-aligned, I don't know, default of letterpress and things like that. And it also puts you like closer and in more direct contact with like the act of making. So you know in the 60s and 50s, you had people that were making what would probably be more similar to zines, right? Or like maybe they were typed on a typewriter and then Xeroxed and things like that. But like the sort of handmade object, I feel like that resurgence is more recent. Yeah. So those are some of the reasons why we love chapbooks. And it's also just really good if you're starting to see like how your poems are in conversation, like Sarah was talking about, but you're like, I mean, the idea of having 80 pages is overwhelming, or it disinterests you. Like, then the chapbook can be a really productive way to see how those are interacting, and like maybe get them out in the world and get some like feedback and reception, and helps you to start understand how things might fit together in a larger piece too. Not every chapbook ends up being a whole manuscript. Some are contained to the chapbook, but it's very helpful.